everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Maika, welcome to Floating in Dreams. This is my hobby YouTube channel, and on this channel we chat about all things makeup and fashion related. I only do the fashion bit a little bit, and makeup wise I just love me an eyeshadow palette. So that's what most of my content is focused on, but I also like to try out Essence and Catrice products, and I also like to get to use out of my products, so I do shop my stashes and sort of that whole spiel. So that's what I sort of like to do on here. So if that's something that you're interested in, then please hit the subscribe button, because I'd love to have you join my little family here. And today's video, we are going to be chatting about my favorite topic again, eyeshadow palettes. And not just any eyeshadow palette, we're talking cool toned neutral eyeshadow palettes today. So I have been ranking my entire eyeshadow palette collection in terms of like what color story they kind of fit. And I've been doing this for a few months now, and I knew I had to do a cool toned one as well, of course. So I actually have 40 palettes here for you today. Not all of them are going to be part of the actual ranking. We'll be ranking 37 of them. Some of these have been discontinued. Some of these I love and adore. And some of these, if you're a regular viewer, you will see coming from a mile away. But I just thought we could chat about all things cool toned eyeshadow palette today. And let's rank them, because I think that that will be an interesting thing to do as well. So let's get to this ranking. There's always a couple of things that I need to announce before we get to the ranking, and that is the palettes that I will not be ranking. And that's usually the things I haven't tried yet. Most of the stuff I'll be ranking for you today, I have tried, and I know I featured it in videos or I've done reviews with it on my blog as well. So there will be loads of links in the description box down below to some of my 10 palette review videos, but also to individual reviews if I have those up with some of these palettes. So make sure you check out the description box, because there you will find swatches and looks that I've done with these palettes as well, so that if you're interested in one particular one, that you will know where to go and what you might want to find, because the day this video goes live is US Thanksgiving, so that means that Black Friday sales are about to happen, or they are currently in full force. So maybe if you were eyeing something up in particular, then this video might be helpful to help you make your picks if you were so interested. So let me get started with the things I haven't tried yet, because those I can't rank because I don't know how these would perform. And the first thing I wanted to share is the Rival Hearts Me Smoky Eyeshadow Palettes. And this is something a subscriber of mine sent me, because this is a German drugstore brand that I don't have access to. And she was like, would you like to try this brand a bit more? And then she sent me this palette, and she was like, I know you love your cool tones, so maybe you can try this at some point. I believe these are very cheap and cheerful, especially for how many shades you get. You get 18 shades, and I think it retails for less than €5. However, it's going to be super hard to buy unless you're in Germany. I haven't tried this yet. The swatches seemed a little bit powdery, so I think it is sort of that classic, sort of very affordable drugstore kind of formula. But I haven't tried it on my face yet, so I can't be sure. So I don't know how these perform yet if you stick your brush in. And then another palette that I really haven't tried yet is very new to me. I just got this in. This is the Midas Cosmetics Unveiled Cool Nudes palette. And this is something I picked up. Someone actually contacted me and was like, hey, Midas Cosmetics has 50% off of everything. And I think it was buy one, get one half off or whatever. That was a deal. And Midas is really expensive to buy from if you're not in the US. So we kind of did a joint order. And that's how I got my hands on some Midas Cosmetics for the first time. And of course, if they do a cool tone palette, then I need to try it. It's just then I got it home and I was like, this is called, what's it called again? Unveiled Cool Nudes. This to me looks like a warm tone palette, because you get a mustard in here, and you get quite like two very similar warm tone browns. So I'm very curious how this pulls on me. This may be one of those cool tone palettes that is cool toned if you have a warm undertone. In case you are unfamiliar with that concept, I know that a lot of people find cool tones unflattering on them because they're very ashy, but I myself am very fair-skinned, as you can see, and I've got a cool to neutral undertone. So on me, grays and taupes tend to look really flattering, and something like this just kind of can end up looking like I was punched in the face. So with this, I'm very curious to see how it will go on and whether these are actually cool toned or whether they're going to pull very warm tone on me. Then a palette that I need to show because I know people know I own this palette. However, this is a brand I don't feature up on my channel. If you'd want to know why I don't feature this, then just do a Google search for this name and the controversies that are going around this brand. I'm thinking, you know, they're trying to redeem themselves a little bit, but it is Jeffree Star Cosmetics, and that's just a brand I'm not entirely comfortable talking about on the channel, which is why the cremated palette is not going to be ranked. And there is actually another reason why I'm not going to be ranking this. I like the color story of this, which is why I bought it. Yeah, I did buy some Jeffree Star products over time, before most of the controversies really started to happen. So I'm hanging on to the products that I have because I did pay money for it, and I paid my own hard-earned cash for these products, and I like to go back to them from time to time. But there's another reason why this isn't necessarily my favorite palette, because even though it's a really good cool tone color story with loads of different taupe shades and grays, I actually had some issues with some of the shimmers in this palette, and that's why I want to try this a bit more to really see if it's the formula or whether it was just my eyes being like very watery that day. But some of the shimmers in this palette actually caused a bit of irritation when I used them on the lower lash line. Now we're getting to the ranking, and I have 37 palettes to rank for you, so that's quite a bit, and I want to get through this as speedily as possible and also give you the opportunity to watch this video whichever way you'd like. So I've decided to put the ranking into 3 separate sections. I'm still going to be ranking them from 37 to 1. However, you should know that the bottom range of the palettes I'm going to be showing you are all things that I either wasn't really happy with, or they are things that are very much discontinued and quite old and are going to be incredibly hard to find. Then the mid-range are palettes that there's still a couple of discontinued things in there, but they are things that I just still really like enough. However, they are not super duper special to me. And then I'll make sure that my top 12 is actually going to be listed separately as well towards the end of this video, where I have my all-time favorite cool tone palettes for you guys there as well. So let's get started with number 37. And number 37, I decided to put all the way at the bottom, not because I dislike the quality of these shadows. That goes to say for everything that's in this video, I don't necessarily think the quality is bad. It's mainly that either the color story didn't work for me, or like I said, it's very limited edition or discontinued by now. And the reason why I put this guy in the number 37 spot is because this isn't the Blush Crush. This is actually the shades I kept from Stone Cold Fox. And this is the reason why this gets to go into the number 37 spot, because the Stone Cold Fox from ColourPop just wasn't quite right for me. It was a bit big, and I ended up keeping the shades that I liked from the palette. So I sort of curated my own perfect color story from the entire palette. And I feel that, like, with however many shades that was, it's like, what, 32 or 36? It was just too big. It's not my vibe. It's not my kind of thing that I like going for necessarily. So I decided to just keep the 9 shades that I do like, and that's what I ended up going for. But that's why I did put the Stone Cold Fox in the number 37 spot, because I essentially just didn't even like most of the palette. Number 36 is the LA Girl Downplay palette. Again, nothing wrong with the quality of this palette for sure. It's got some really lovely quality, especially for the price point. I believe this is quite cheap and cheerful, around the like 8 to 10 euro mark, depending on where you buy this from. You get some really intense flaky shimmers. And it's sort of like a dupe of the Huda Beauty Smoky Obsessions palette, which is one I never got to try because I kind of discovered Huda Beauty a little later than those palettes were released, and by that time the Smoky Obsessions had gone out of stock everywhere. So I never was able to try that, but that's why I thought I could sort of try a similar color story. And in this palette, I feel that these 2 shades are too similar, and then everything goes really deep really quickly, which on my fair skin, it's just not the best. Number 35 is a limited edition palette that I don't think you can still buy, and it's from Dior. It's their Black Night 5 eyeshadow palette from their Golden Nights Christmas collection. That was limited edition for last year. And the reason why I put this so far down the bottom is A, because you can no longer get it, but also because these shades are essentially all going to translate quite similarly on the eye. I have to say, when I played around with this, I did really like it, and I'm keeping it around for those like really dark, intense pops. If you want to do some sort of like smoky eye, this is a lovely, lovely palette, but it is a little bit of a one-trick pony. And this formula is a little bit on the stiff side, so it really depends on how you work with this palette, what brushes you use with it, how it's going to show up. And depending on your application techniques, you will get different results accordingly. And for how expensive this is, I mean, it's Dior. This easily retails for like 56 to 60 euros. I feel there are other palettes that can do something similarly that worked a little bit better for me, as you will see in a minute. Number 34 then is Makeup Revolution. This is their Black Pearl eyeshadow palette. And this I had to pick up simply because of that color story, and I haven't heard anybody talking about it. However, Makeup Revolution's formula is just not my favorite. I still think this palette has a lot going for it, especially for those people on a budget and you want something cool toned that can do quite a bit, but it's still nice and curated. I think this is a clever one to have. You get some good taupes in here, some deeper shades, but it also goes light enough that you can do very natural everyday looks. You can stay away from a smoky eye if you want to. And I really like that you get the addition of this very dusty lavender kind of shade that really adds a pop of something more interesting and makes this not a boring cool tone neutral palette. But since Makeup Revolution's formula isn't my favorite, I had to rank this in the bottom. Number 33 is Urban Decay Naked Basics 2. I'm not sure whether this is still available. I believe there are places you can still find this. And this is just, it's one of my favorite like all matte palettes. You can also tell this has been pretty much through the ringer. What I like still doing with this palette, actually what I keep it around for, it's like a very basic eye and then putting something like a pressed glitter or like one of those Stila glittering glows to put that all over the lid. So it makes for a super easy look that looks like you've tried to do a lot because of that addition of the glitter. But this is a very basic, all matte, very light. I mean, unless you are as fair as mine, I don't think you'll be able to pull this one off. So this palette I thought was lovely. It gives me exactly what I need. And it's not too dark. So for me, this is a perfect basic palette, but it gets to go all the way in the bottom of this ranking because I feel it's very limiting in what it can actually do. Then next up at number 32, we have the Zoeva On Taupe, which was discontinued. Zoeva got rid of their entire line of eyeshadow palettes and have completely rebranded to be a more sustainable brand and to do like a lot of like very inclusive shades and all that. Yeah, the On Taupe was discontinued. Like the Urban Decay Naked Basics 2, this is incredibly light. So this was not a lot of people's favorite. It is quite a very monochromatic color scheme. Why I always like this one is because over here you get some duochromes that nobody ever tells you about. But in terms of how light this was one of the first cool tone palettes I ever tried. And this is what kind of made me realize how perfect cool tones are on me. And especially because they are so light. For me, they just worked really, really well. But I can again see why this may not be everyone's favorite. And I didn't want to put too many like super duper light palettes in my top 12. There are going to be a couple, I'm not gonna lie, but I don't feel this is as versatile as some of the other palettes that I will be mentioning further on. In the number 31 spot, we've got the She Glam Deep Feelings palette. And this palette, I rank this low for a number of reasons. First of all, She Glam is owned by Shein, which is a fast fashion retailer. And we all know about fast fashion, how ethical that is. So this is definitely not a palette where you're like, okay, yeah, so I was actually doubting whether I should even put it in the ranking, you know, but I kind of did, because the reason why it's also low has to do with the shades in here. For how affordable this is, the quality is okay, but I do feel that where you get, like, it looks like you get loads of different shades in here, but to me, it really all muddies together into one thing. So for me, it's also not great from that perspective. And I do think this is one that I'm going to be decluttering when I declutter my collection again in 2022. Essence Silver Glitter Show. Look at how fun that packaging is. This was part of their Sister Love eyeshadow palette collection a number of years ago, and it had this very lovely color story. And I just keep this around because this is the best eyeshadow quality that Essence has ever done, I should say. And it's discontinued because this was like out for a hot minute. I was only able to find it for like a week at my local drugstore, and then it disappeared. So not a lot of people will have been able to get their hands on this, but I do really like the quality of this, which is why I did have to go towards the top end of the lower, like bottom part of this ranking, you could say, because this is a lovely little palette and I hold it very near and dear to my heart. Also discontinued, I'm no longer sure what number we're at, but the Milani Soft and Sultry. This was a cool tone palette that really got a lot of people excited for cool tones again. However, I've tried this and I felt it wasn't that cool toned. The quality of this is amazing. It's really, really good quality. And I think you can still find this palette like lurking around on resales, like websites like a Macari or like Depop, those kind of places. You might still be able to find it. However, it was pulled from stores many, many moons ago. And I feel that really only this sort of section and then maybe these two browns, like this is the only thing really that's very cool toned, and everything else, it's quite warm toned, I have to say. I'm gonna have to be very honest with you that most of this palette actually skews quite warm toned, especially if you are someone with fair skin and you've got a cool to neutral undertone. Moving on then to the mid-range, and this is going to be the largest section of today's video because we're going from number 28 all the way to number 13, so there's like 16 palettes in this part of the ranking. So bear with me because it gets a little crazy. But in the number 28 spot, I wanted to show you this, the Naked Smoky from Urban Decay. I love Urban Decay Naked palettes. I really like that formula, which is why this does get to go into the mid-range of this ranking. This was discontinued a long time ago, and where the Naked Basics 2 is a little bit too light for me, or for most people perhaps, this was a little bit too dark for my personal makeup taste, because especially in the mattes, that's this section over here, all four of these just kind of pull the same, and I really needed something that could sort of bridge the gap between this to really make it work. Now, I know that I could, for instance, blend these two together and these two together to lighten them and to really create my personal perfect crease shade, which is how I use this palette when I do use it. But I mainly use it for these two like dark gray shades, which are blue tone grays, which I love using for a smoky eye. So in terms of the name, Naked Smoky, there's still only like 1 or 2 looks I like to do with this, so it's very limited and I don't reach for this a whole lot, which is why it gets to go so far down the bottom because it's definitely not perfect. But if I want to do that grayish blue tone smoky eye, this is the palette I grab for. Number 27 is one that is a bit of a conglomeration, but it's really about the core of this melt stack that I wanted to rank here. This is the Melt Gunmetal stack, but it features shades from the Blueprint as well as a shade from the Rust stack in here. But I won't be showing you those because those don't tend to go. But this is what the Gunmetal stack looks like. This is a great cool tone palette, and I'm still waiting for Melt to turn this into a palette. Please, please Melt. This, I believe, has been out of stock for a very long time, so that is why I decided to put it again at the bottom of this ranking in the number 27 spot. Number 26 then, the Catrice 5 in a Box eyeshadow palette in Blue Smoky Look. This is a very gray tone palette, and one of my main gripes with a lot of cool tone palettes is that they are very gray toned. Cool tones don't have to be grays. When will brands learn? You can have a cool tone brown. Just saying. So this to me wasn't perfect. I wish this would have been a navy to make it more blue smoky, but now it's just gray tones with a pop of blue, which to me wasn't the best. And also these later 5 in a Box palettes that Catrice has now come out with, I feel aren't the same quality as the initial launch that they did. So that's why this gets to go into the bottom. Seems like we're doing all the little palettes first here. So next up is the Dose of Colors Smoky Soiree palette. And this to me is a little bit like the Dior palette that I just showed you, because it is very much a smoky eye palette, and then it also has like the smoky shades with a reddish tone to it. However, this has some unexpected warmth, especially in these three shades. So to me, it's not super duper cool toned, even though at first glance you might look at this and go like, that's a smoky eye palette, so it's probably going to be cool toned. It's not. And with Dose of Colors, I really wanted to try this, to try their shimmer formula, but I'm not a huge fan of their shimmer formula. So that's why this again gets to go towards the bottom of this ranking. Number 25 then, and this is a palette that I do quite enjoy, but it kind of goes at the bottom here because I feel there are other cool tone palettes from this brand that I rate far more highly, and that is the Bambi Thumper palette by ColourPop. This is a really cute, very, very light cool tone color story with a pop of green that I was able to make work quite well. However, you should know that I double prime my lids, which means that A, shadows stick down a lot better, and 2, they always look a little bit more vibrant because of it. So I would recommend, if you have trouble with this sticking down, or if you have trouble with this showing up, to double prime your lids, because that will definitely help. At least it helps in my case with every shadow I use, which is why I do it. But yeah, this was a lovely little palette. It was very sort of natural, and I do really like it, but it is a one-trick pony, and I do like my palettes to be a little bit more versatile, even if they are this small. 24 then is another Dose of Colors palette, and this is the one nobody ever talks about, but it's the Pretty Cool palette. And the reason why this gets to go into the number 24 spot is not because I don't like the formula. This is their all matte palette, and Dose of Color mattes, yes, they're a bit powdery, but I really, really like them, which is why I own this, because I already owned 2 of these palettes before I decided to buy this. It's got a green tone taupe, which you don't find a lot in a lot of palettes, which is why it's a little bit more unique. But because it is essentially 5 shades of different types of taupes, I feel it doesn't really create one look. So this is the kind of palette where you use 1 or 2 of these to set the look up, but then you're gonna need other shades to pull those in to really make it work. And that's why this is not entirely perfect, but because I think it's got something unique going on, and because I do really enjoy the colors that you do get in here, it does get to go a little bit higher up than, for instance, something like the Naked Basics 2. Number 23 is another ColourPop palette. This is the Ballad palette from their first range of these 5-pan palettes. And this I really like. This is not boring gray tones, but again, as much as I like this, especially that taupe in the middle and also that taupey matte, I feel this is just a little bit bland. This could have been a little bit more adventurous. This shade could have just been a different shimmer, I think. And these 2 shades are essentially mattes with glitters in them, which is not my favorite thing. Can you make this work? Can you make these look lovely? For sure. The look I did with this, I was really happy with, but to make matters even worse, the packaging feels incredibly cheap too. So I feel this isn't my favorite ColourPop cool tone color story for sure, which is why it gets to go in this part of the ranking. Then a palette that is by Fenty Beauty, the number 6 Smoky palette from their Snap Shadows. And the reason why I'm ranking this so far down is because I kind of just bought this to make the palette that I'm going to be ranking a little bit later on, to make that one more versatile. So for me, this is very much a companion palette. Doing a look with this is possible for me, but it is quite deep and smoky, as the name would suggest. However, as you will see in a minute, I have another one of these little Fenty Snap Shadows, and I really like combining the 2 to make different looks. We are in the top 20 with the Morphe Jaclyn Hill Vault palette in the shade Dark Magic. This ended up being the only palette from the Vault that I kept around, and it's the only Morphe eyeshadow I've ever tried, so I don't have much reference in terms of Morphe quality. I like this. I like how it's cool tones, but you do get some pops of color, but it's still neutral. Like, you can still do like a taupey eye if you want to. So for me, I really like this. It's got some really good shades, but it's Morphe. I don't love their quality. They're not my favorite brand, and that's why it gets to go into the number 20 spot. Number 19 then is Juvia's Place The Taupes. And I know that a lot of people didn't like it because it was very light and it didn't do much for them. On my fair skin, this worked really well. However, I have just found that these little palettes from Juvia's are not the same quality that they have in their larger palettes. I always felt that Juvia's Place was really good at doing shimmers, but these have a certain level of stiffness to them that I'm not used to from the brand. And to be quite fair, I haven't been a huge fan of any of Juvia's Place's releases in the past year or so. I like this for sure. It definitely has a lot going for it. I will definitely be going back to it, but I do feel it's not that great because it's just very light, very samey, a bit of a one-trick pony, not as versatile as it could have been, and that's why it gets to go into the number 19 spot. Number 18 then, ABH's Sultry palette. This was discontinued. It's sometimes brought back, so I know that some people were able to find this again later on. Like the Milani palette, this is not as cool toned as it could have been because you get some warmth here, and because you get that, I feel we don't get a cool toned transition shade because this shade Twig is actually quite warm toned, so for me it's not that perfect. However, you get some good cool tones in here. I just felt that like the things on the bottom row are very cool tone, but then the top row just isn't. So for me, this could have been more cool tone. And then the Lorac Pro 2 is going to be in the number 17 spot, if I'm not mistaken. That's what we're at. This is another cool tone color story where I really like a bunch of individual shades, and this is a palette I like to go back to. Like this chrome shade is lovely, but to me this palette isn't perfect because again, you don't really get that taupey transition that I love so much. It goes quite gray toned and everything else is quite light. You do get some pops of color in here, making it a little bit more versatile. And I also really like this jade shade along the lower lash line. So I like this a lot. It's one of my favorite Lorac Pro palettes. It's not my favorite. That one is going to show up in another ranking. But this is lovely. I like the quality. However, by now, other cool tone color stories have come to the market, and that's why this one has been pushed back down just a little bit. Then in the number 16 spot, we're talking Lime Crime. This is their Venus is XL2, and I think this is the only palette here that isn't like an actual like cool tone neutral. It is a cool tone palette and it looks very neutral on me, but depending on your undertone, I think this may skew a little bit differently. And this is definitely not a palette that got a lot of hype because it's very light and a lot of people didn't love this. I didn't buy this myself until I actually saw it in store and was like, but that could work on me. And I actually found out that you get some greens in here and then some rosy mauve tones. So maybe I should have put it in my next ranking actually, because I'm going to be ranking all of my rosy toned, mauve rosy toned palettes next month. However, I feel this is still neutral enough, if that makes sense. Come to think of it, now that I look at this, it's got a very similar vibe over on this side of the palette if you compare it to the Mini Retro from Natasha Denona. Maybe I should have put that palette in this ranking too. Yeah. But yeah, this does have a couple of really stunning shades. You get some warmth, but not a whole lot. In my brain, this just very much works like a cool tone palette, which is why it gets to go into the number 16 spot. Number 15 is another Lime Crime palette, and this actually ranks a little bit higher because it is a true, very cool toned, ashy color story. It's the Venus Immortalis, and I remember seeing this and going like, that I need. Again, is it as versatile as it could have been? No, because again, I feel that one of these two should have been more of a taupe. This is very gray, this is a very soft, mauve, plummy shade, and this is just creams. So for me, I wish there would have been a better transition shade in here, that I would have liked it better. However, for just 8 shades, this is a super versatile palette, which is why it gets to go towards my top part of this ranking, because this plum makes this palette and just makes it work. You get two really gorgeous silvery taupey shimmers that I just love, and Echo especially, like this shade, is perfection. The ColourPop Ballot taupe is very close to this actually. Then we have number 14, and number 14 would be the Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons. This is a cool tone palette that I remember a lot of people were loving, and it is a really good cool tone color story. no longer available. This was discontinued years ago, and I still like going into this for certain looks for sure. I love how you get this blue tone gray in here. Cafe au lait is my favorite shimmer in the entire palette. I love almond truffle for a bit of a crease action. So this definitely has, like, again, one or two looks that I like going for It's got a good formula. It still hasn't expired till this day, and I still hold this very near and dear to my heart. And then just outside my top 12 is the Nabla Cutie palette in the shade Platinum. This is number 3 of their Cutie palettes. And the reason why this is ranking just outside of my top 12 is because this palette is a cool tone palette that is great for people with a warm or olivey undertone. If you are someone who struggles making cool tones work because they look a little dead and ashy on you, then this is the palette for you. However, I'm ranking this according to my preferences and what works for my personal makeup taste. And then this is just a little bit off in terms of colors. These two browns do pull a little pinky when I blend them out, which is why they still work. But especially that gold shade, it doesn't really go with the vibe that I like to go for when I wear a full-on cool tone color story, which is why this ranks just outside of the top 12 in the number 13 spot. But the quality of this is lovely, and I think a lot of you might like this if you are deeper than me or if you have a warmer undertone. Right, time for the top 12, and in the number 12 spot I am ranking that other Fenty Snap Shadow that I mentioned already, number 2, Cool Neutrals. I called this a bit of a one-trick pony in my video, but because I have the other palette, I know I can get more looks out of this. But I do really like the quality of these. It's a very nice buildable formula. These two pinks are perhaps a little samey. I would have liked that to be a little bit different. But I do feel that because this has the purple, that isn't the best purple on the planet, but it's just enough to add a bit of a pop of color somewhere in your look, whether it's the inner corner or the lower lash line or as a bit of liner. I can see this palette actually going quite a long way. In the number 11 spot, I wanted to rank the Catrice 5 in a Box palette in modern smoky look. Now, depending on where you live, you might still be able to buy it or not. Over here, this has already been discontinued, and I like this enough that I actually bought myself a backup. I don't have that many backups in my collection. In fact, I only have 2 or 3 backups in my entire collection. And this is one of them because this was discontinued really quickly. You get a really great taupey shade. This gray has enough blue to it that it really makes sense in the palette as well. So where my main issue with the other 5 in a Box palette, that it was too gray toned, this is just perfection. I really like this. This steely blue is lovely too. And this is from the first Catrice launch of these palettes. So this also has the better quality. That's why it's in the number 11 spot. In the number 10 spot, Viseart Petite Four Lilas. I ranked my purple palettes and then my Viseart Violette Étendue was actually in the number 1 spot because I really enjoy the Viseart formula, which is why this gets to go into my top 12 ranking for sure. But this is, again, very limited in what you can do with it because it's only 4 shades. However, this, together with the Violette Étendue and some of the other Viseart palettes I have, makes for exactly those shades I need to sometimes make those other things work. You get a really good taupey transition shade. This taupe shimmer is life. This silvery champagne-y taupe is really nice too. And then this has just a little bit of the mauve that I really like bringing into my looks as well. So that's why this palette is it's just a really nice one, and it really suits my makeup tastes, which is why the Viseart Petite Four Lilas gets to go into this part of the ranking. Then number 10, it goes to a very new to me brand. This is the Glam Shop Poland Coco Sanka palette. This is a Polish indie brand, so they're based in Europe, which is great. And their palettes retail for around 20 euros, and this 9-pan color story kind of really conquered my heart. It's really good. Really good, lovely quality. These shimmers are out of this world amazing. You get some good mattes. The only reason why this goes into the number 10 spot and not any higher up is because this was quite dark and quite sultry on me. It made for quite a like smoky eye vibe, and that's not always what I like to go for. And I think this palette may struggle giving me anything lighter and more everyday. However, some of you have been recommending one of their other cool tone palettes, so maybe if I at some point buy that, then I can combine those. But I've got a lot of cool tone palettes, as you can see, so first I would have to declutter a few before I could ever consider buying more. But yeah, this is a really, really nice one, and I highly recommend you checking out Glam Shop if you haven't yet. We're in the top 10. Number 9 would be the BH Cosmetics Love in London palette. This is the palette that I hope they keep coming back with. They have been re-releasing a lot of these like destination travel palettes from other like the other ones that they've done so far, but the Love in London they just haven't done yet. And it's such a shame because this is the palette that introduced me and really got me hyped up for BH. I had tried some BH before, liked it, thought it was okay, but this is the palette that really, really swayed me. This has also been in like my top 15 neutral palettes and like my top palettes of all time because I really like this, but it was discontinued. So you can no longer buy this. However, you get some really good taupes in here. You get a little bit of warmth to make it a little bit more versatile, to give you some more looks. And then here you get a plum, a navy, and a blue toned, like silvery kind of deeper shade that really gives you a little bit more to play around with, and you don't just have to go for like grays with a shimmer, you know? Was this number 9? Maybe I think I miscounted somewhere because this is number 7. I think I missed somewhere along the way. However, there were so many palettes here I couldn't keep track. Too Faced White Chocolate Bar. Yes, if I had to pick a cool tone color story that is also very fair skin friendly, then the White Chocolate Bar would be it. The reason why this didn't get a lot of hype, it's very light and it's very cool toned. You get a little bit of peachiness over here, but it's still more like pinky leaning peaches rather than orange leaning peaches, if that makes sense. You get some really nice cool tone shimmers. This little quad over here, yes. This was the color story that really, when it comes to like Too Faced palettes, this is the one I reach for the most. This is the one I go back to every winter. Like January, February time when I'm super duper pale in the dead of winter, this is by pretty much the only thing that still works on me because it's light enough for it to work. However, it was discontinued, and that's why I didn't want to put it any higher up in this ranking. Number 6 then, and that would be the Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse palette. This to me was so lovely, and it's really put Lunar Beauty on the map for me. I haven't tried any of their other palettes, but this one really sees me through, you could say. It has everything I want and then some. You get the lovely like cooler toned mattes and then this like taupey silvery like sort of shimmers over here. You get a full row of grays and blue tones so you can go into a smoky look if you'd want to. And then you just get a little bit of warmth sprinkled in to really keep the palette from looking too dead and ashy on most people. So if it comes to like versatility and cool tones, then I think the Eternal Eclipse from Lunar Beauty is one of the best things that has come out in recent years. I'm not sure if this is still available though. Was this limited edition last year? I don't know. So I'm not sure if you can still buy this, but if you still can, and you're looking for a good cool toned color story that can do a lot, and that can even work on you if you have a warm undertone, then definitely check this out because I think it's very versatile and very perfect for a lot of people that aren't as pale as me. And then we're getting to the top 5, and save for one thing, all of it is quite bougie, and I wanted to make sure that there were things in here you could still buy. However, we couldn't do a cool tone ranking without mentioning my OG, the Naked 2 from Urban Decay. Long since discontinued, but I did decide to put it in the number 5 spot of this ranking because it's the OG. I still use this. I still want to go back to this. I still play around with this. This is the cool tone color story of all cool tone color stories because yes, it is very shimmer heavy, but again, where a lot of brands think that cool tones need to be grays, you only get 2 grays in here. Next up in the number 4 spot, I told you we were gonna get bougie. Pat McGrath subliminal one. This is one of their first launches. So when the brand launched, I think they came up with like 3 palettes, and this was one of the original ones that launched, and this is the one that nobody talks about because it's quite light and it's very, very cool toned. So it's not necessarily something that a lot of people rave about. This is what the palette looks like. And is this my favorite Pat McGrath palette? It may just be, because you do get a little bit of that like plumminess in here. You get a really nice like taupey transition. These shades are great. I love that you get this bright pop of blue to just really change it up. So with this, I feel you can do something really basic and neutral, but then you have some shades to really amp it up, to glam it up. You get something nice and deep to really like deepen it up as well. So this is a very versatile palette, but of course, Pat McGrath is super duper expensive. I would highly recommend only ever buying Pat McGrath when it goes on sale. Then number 3 is the affordable option in my top 5. ColourPop, that's taupe. Those ColourPop palettes I showed you before isn't because ColourPop's formula is bad or anything. I really like the ColourPop formula, but this. And this, it's all taupe, but it goes dark enough and light enough to really get a lot of versatile looks out of this. Will it always be a taupey look? Will it always be neutral? Because that's all you get in here. You don't get the pop of color like the Pat McGrath has. But I mean, this, yes. If you're looking for an affordable brand that does really good taupey eyeshadow, then try out the That's Taupe. And then number 2, and I think this is where it gets a little bit controversial, because again, a lot of people didn't like this. Melts Mary Jane, anyone? I mean, I'm the only one over here hyping up this palette. And for someone as fair as me, you may wonder, Micah, why do you love this? Because of these 2 transition shades. Like the Pat McGrath, this palette has 2 topper shades that really make this palette work for me. If it didn't have those toppers, it would just look like I was punched in the face. But because we get those toppers, I'm able to create subtly in the look. And here, like with the Pretty Cool palette, we do get some like greenish taupey shades, which are my favorite. So it's got something more unique going on as well. So for me, we get everything here. And because we do get some shades, unlike the Naked Smoky, we do get some shades that range in depth in terms of mattes. So I can still make this work very, very well. And it's precisely because of those 2 topper shades that everybody disliked. If you try building them up to full intensity on your eye, they're not going to work. However, if you use those shades on the end to top them over some of those darker shimmers, I promise, magic will happen. And then finally, number 1, the palette that has replaced the Urban Decay Naked 2 for me in terms of mainly availability is the Natasha Denona Glam palette. Again, not a very affordable palette. I do apologize. I just love the formula of this palette. It's really nice. You get more shimmers than mattes though. That's something you have to bear in mind. You get a little bit of warmth, again, to really tie everything together. It's very light, it's very cool toned, it's perfect. It is very similar to Urban Decay's Naked 2 though. So if that color story really appeals to you, but you want it in a more updated, more now formula, then I think the Glam palette from Natasha Denona can actually be a good pick. But yeah, the Glam palette has not replaced my Urban Decay Naked 2 because I still love that palette to death. However, in terms of recommendations and what you can still buy today, I would definitely recommend this over the Urban Decay Naked 2 by now. It's got a very similar color story. I love this formula, but you can essentially do the same look with both of them. So that's why don't go hunting for an Urban Decay Naked 2. Buy this instead. There you have it. Those are all the palettes that I wanted to rank for you today. And since this video was long enough as it is, I'm just going to round off here. So you know what to do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more by me. I make 3 new videos a week, so I hope you would like to stay tuned and come back for more in another video. So I hope to see you then. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.